Nolan Xavier Wells was 18 years old and by every account made each room he walked into better. On July 4th, he went to Horn Island off the Mississippi Gulf Coast with a group of people he believed were his friends. According to current reporting, sometime around 3 p.m., those friends got back on the boat and left without him. His mother reported him missing at midnight and his body was found 2 days later in the water. The friends say they don't know what happened to him or why he stayed, but real friends tend to know these things. Investigators are currently leaning towards drowning as cause of death, without a timeline or any public questioning of the friends who left him there. The family has retained Ben Crump and is calling for a full, transparent investigation because right now, too many things don't add up. If history is any guide, without outside pressure, this case gets quietly closed as an accident and the family never gets real answers. Because this story fits a pattern we all know too well. Black people only make up 13% of the population in this country, and yet we account for 40% of all missing persons cases. There are 4 times more unsolved missing persons cases for Black Americans than for white Americans. And when we go missing, none of the media coverage, urgency, or resources actually matches the scale of what's happening to us. Nolan Wells deserved to come home, and his family deserves the truth about why he didn't. And the fact that they have to fight this hard to get it in 2026 tells you everything about how this country still values Black lives.
So Nolan Wells' body was found earlier this week, and the story has just gotten bigger and bigger. You've got deleted text messages, an argument on the water, and a judge defending her son from accusations. And now you've got Ben Crump, the same lawyer who fought for George Floyd and Trayvon Martin, stepping in because Wells' family says that there are too many unanswered questions. Got them claiming that there is nothing right about this case. And with all these questions and suspicion, you got a lot of people pointing fingers at Wells' friends, asking why they left him behind on the island in the first place. And with one of the guys that he was with being the son of a judge in the area, she then went to Facebook to deny rumors about their involvement in all this, saying no one in our family is trying in any way to impede with the investigation. And you had her claiming the kids had to leave the island that day because of an issue with their boat, and that Wells decided to stay and catch a ride with another group of friends. But then you also had Crump saying that Wells had a conversation with a girl who apparently had a different story.
They are conflicting. She's saying he went and got on the boat. They saying he didn't get on the boat. So which is it? And all we know is Nolan is dead.
And then with that, you've also got authorities asking for more information about a video that's been going around from that day, where we can hear what sounds like people arguing in the background. So right now, no one's confirmed if Wells was involved in that. But then on top of those issues, you're seeing some concerns with Wells' phone, making things even more complicated for the family.
They're saying messages that were deleted from his cell phone, so they want to try to dot every I and cross every T. They're trying to look at what is that about. There are so many inconsistencies going on.
And also, under all of this, you're seeing the issue of race. And when you look online, you're seeing a lot of people having those similar concerns, saying, I absolutely do not believe it was an accident. There should be a completely independent investigation because I do not trust Mississippi at all. And he was left behind on a Mississippi island. We love to preach equality until a Black boy is the only one in the group, and then it's silent suspicion and accidents. And you now have Crump saying that they're flying the body to DC for an independent autopsy. And he's hoping that they get results back from that pretty soon. So let me know your thoughts, share to spread the word, and of course, follow to stay in the loop.
Of course, they want to deny involvement. They collectively came up with a plan to say he didn't get back on the boat with them, clearly. But there's text messages that were deleted. That's suspicious right there. That's the first red flag. Although the messages may have been deleted out of their phones, you know how easy it is to get the records pulled up? Go to the phone company, ask them for the printout of the text messages. They thought they were smart. Y'all not that smart. 2, something probably popped off, a fight. They dropped them in the water. Simple as that. This always happens. I'm not saying always like this happens every time you go out with a group of friends, but I'm saying, how many times have this same type of story happened? The one that just so happens to be Black goes out with a group of friends, the Black will never come back. Even if it's Black people too, if it's all Black people involved, still, one of them don't come back. The rest of them do, and they got on the boat. You know what I mean? This happens with friends that are Black as well. I'm not making it a race thing. I'm not race baiting. But we got to call it for what it is. He was the only Black one. They got into it. It's simple to throw him overboard, and I bet you he couldn't swim either, and they knew that.
So the body of Nolan Wells was just discovered 2 days after he went missing on Horn Island in Mississippi after an Independence Day trip with his friends. So I think it's time we have a conversation about the plight of suburban Black kids. In case you're confused on what I'm talking about, let me catch you up. So on July 4th, Nolan Xavier Wells went on an Independence Day trip with some friends to Horn Island, Mississippi. Later that day, Nolan went missing. We don't know exactly what happened, and the friends that he was with claim they don't remember anything about Nolan's disappearance, but what we do know is that his friends returned and Nolan did not. A 2-day-long search ensued, and on the morning of July 6th, the body of Nolan Wells was found on the northwest end of Horn Island. To be completely honest, we can sit here speculating for hours on end the very suspicious details of Nolan's death, but something else I think we can be focusing on instead is what the circumstances surrounding his death say about the lives of Black kids in suburbia, because I think it has so much to do with the public outrage surrounding this case. So take a look at these pictures. What's glaringly obvious is that Nolan was the only black kid present during this trip, and to many, that may not seem like something to take note of, so let's break it down. As a young black woman who grew up in predominantly white and Asian spaces my entire life, you become so desensitized until you can no longer recognize a microaggression, bias, or prejudice when you see it. They'll say, "Where did princess go when the lights turn off?" Or they'll ogle and touch your hair as if it doesn't grow out of your scalp like it's unnatural. They'll be shocked and marvel at your vocabulary and your diction because they don't expect you to speak so proper. The list goes on and on.
Right, and I just want to pause this, not to make this about anything else, but this is right on topic. I was in the store one time, right, and it was this young black dude with a group of young white men, or young white kids, rather, and they were all trying to get some snacks, and they were talking about how much money they had. Each one was saying how much money they had. It was maybe 4 or 5 of them, right? Each person said, "Oh, I got $2, I got $3, I only got $1." The black kid had more money. They said, "Oh, he's rich, he got that from drug dealing. He's a drug dealer," because he had like 10 or $15. Everybody else had it 2 or 3, 4 or $5.
Michelle Obama has this podcast with Craig Robinson titled IMO Podcast. And back in October, she spoke on how a lot of black kids enter college having never been in a relationship. And she attributes this to their being surrounded by white people during their adolescence. And I think this is so important because when all of the microaggressions, the feelings of isolation and not belonging add up, what we're left with is black kids who begin to question their self-worth, their beauty, their intelligence, whether or not they're desirable, etc., etc. More importantly, in the case of Nolan Wells, we end up with black kids who are surrounded by people who do not understand them. The isolation of being surrounded by people who do not look like you begins to feel natural, so much so that these kids feel they can't relate to their own culture. Now, my fear is that when we see black kids being raised in the suburbs, the black community is so quick to throw down the whitewashed gavel. These kids are told they sound white or they talk white for simply having a Valley Girl accent or refusing to use the N-word, when in actuality, they're just products of their environment. So this is poisonous for a couple reasons. Number one,
all right, before she get into the reasons, that's good right there. That's gold. You know how we always talk about being a product of your environment? We usually speak on it from the aspect of growing up in the slums with the crackheads and bums, growing up in the hood where ain't nothing good, right? Those children usually get tied into the streets. On the other hand, you could become a product of your environment if you grew up in the suburbs too. But we don't look at it that way. When we say product of your environment, it's always looked at a bad environment. You could also be the product of a great environment or a less poverty-stricken environment, a suburban environment. I just wanted to put that out there.
when we label our fellow black people as whitewashed, we only solidify a widely held stereotype that there is a type of black person. The ebonics, the hip hop, and the rap, and while these are very important elements to black culture, they are not prerequisites to being black, which leads me to number 2. When we label our black youth as whitewashed, we only serve to ostracize them from a community whom they may just need a little bit more exposure to. This then leads into a domino effect, resulting in a further distancing from their own culture. So this is not all to say that I hated my suburban education experience. I got a great education in a great school district, and I now attend the illustrious Howard University. And it's also not to say that all black kids living in the suburbs are suffering. What I am saying is that rather than casting judgment or othering these black kids for being different from the status quo, we should be involving them in black culture and including them in black spaces. Nolan is not and should not be reduced to an example of this is what happens when you hang around white people. Rather, we should use Nolan's story to understand that black kids living in the suburbs deserve more than just a good education. They deserve community, protection, and a knowledge of a culture to come home to.
It's kind of hard, though, when he might have grew up in an area where there wasn't many black people, so how could he have community? You know, you got the lower level suburbs, then you got the higher level suburbs. The areas, I'm gonna be real, a lot of black people don't make enough to be in. He probably was in one of those areas. You don't want to take him back on the block. You don't want him to be part of that community. People going to take advantage of him. You know, he might not know how to conduct himself in that type of environment. He might be at the wrong place at the right time. Whatever the case may be, just because he didn't come from that environment, right? When you come from a certain environment, you know how to move in that environment. When you're not from that environment, people know you're not from that environment. It's going to go how it's going to go. Y'all know what I'm saying without me saying it on this platform. But what she's saying is true. It's just, I got to give the logic. With this, the reality is, look at him. You could tell he wouldn't survive in that community. And it's hard for him to have a community when his community is everybody he was around. Those were his friends, he thought. Look how I ended for him. One thing about black people, I'm going to just say this, and I don't want nobody to think I'm race baiting, but I'm black, I always got to speak on it, right? And I didn't have white friends and all of that. Black people, if we get into it with our friends, most times, we for one wouldn't be going on, well, I do, I go on boats, but a lot of us don't go on boats, don't do water activities, right? But we will make sure that friends still make it home. If you got a decent friend group anyway. But clearly those were not his friends. You know how your mama always said, them ain't your friends. Those wasn't his friends. Where was his mama had to tell him them ain't his friends? You ain't got no friends. I'm your only friend. See, that's what he needed in his life. You know, a parent to know before you know. It looked like he had an African dad or something like that from the looks of it. So they probably don't know much about the American culture and things of that such. I don't want to talk too much, but y'all get where I'm coming from with that. They don't know what we would know being here our whole life.
Got to teach your kids, especially your kids that are hanging out with rich white kids, that is not good. You got to stop letting them hang out with rich white kids. This Nolan Wells situation never should have happened. The parents of Nolan Wells should have known better than to let him hang out with these kids. I have an older son. I'm not saying it's the parents' fault, but I'm just saying it happens all the time. My older son is half black. He looked more black than he did half. But he got into a similar situation. He was fighting with a bunch of rich kids in North Atlanta, the North Atlanta suburbs, the richest neighborhood in Cherokee County, Georgia. And he was fighting with a bunch of boys over a girl. And lucky for him, he didn't wind up dead. He just wound up locked up for a while. But it could have wound up with him being killed. And, you know, we as parents, we have to do a better job in informing our children about who they should and shouldn't hang out with, because matters. The color of your skin matters, especially when you're hanging out with a bunch of rich kids that have, you know, doctors and lawyers and judges as parents. You know that your kid is going to either wind up locked up or dead.
And they gonna cover it up. You know what? That's a good point. You know, we constant might think like, why don't these cases come to light, or why are they able to hide them? Their parents tied in with the judges. They tied in with the lawyers. They really tied in with the community. Talk about community. They be tied in. They all know each other. One phone call. Your net worth is your network. A lot of them have their network in their pocket. All they got to do is pull that phone out and they can call the judge. They can call the lawyers. They can make deals with them. You know, the courts get wicked like that. You know, it's like that. Police too. The police be tied in with them. They know the top dog at the police department. You know what I mean? That's how it be for them.
So my heart goes out to Nolan Wells' family. I really hate that it happened to him, but you gotta protect your children, because white people will kill your children at the drop of a hat. That's just the way it is, especially these entitled little rich white kids.
I'm about to tell you exactly what the fuck happened to Nolan Wells. I could put any money in the fucking world. See, I hung out with a lot of white people like that in high school. And although I am white myself, I certainly am not one of them. But I did have the pleasure of being their friend, and I guess that came with being the butt of every joke and enjoying the finer things in life. But this is textbook. I can give you a fucking play-by-play, I promise you. See, what had happened was, they were getting rowdy, whatever the case may be, drinking all day. Something happened, malicious or not, doesn't really fucking matter. And those boys saw him take his last breath. I guarantee you that. They had an oh fuck moment, got scared, left him, drove the boat off, went home, told mommy and daddy. Mommy and daddy told him to shut the fuck up and got him a lawyer. It's textbook. Again, I saw this shit happen over and over again growing up. This is how they fucking operate every single motherfucking time. You wanna know what happened to Nolan Wells? Go ask some boys. Problem is now you gotta drag it through court because they lawyered up. But they fucking know. They most certainly fucking know.
Yup. Hey, shout out to all of everybody that gave input on here without no bias. Y'all let me know what y'all think about this. It's kind of hard to trust the news. The news don't put out the real information. Sometimes a lot of this stuff is to distract us. Sometimes it's purposely done. Sometimes it's sacrifices. You know, him having the same lawyer as George Floyd and Trayvon Martin, who George Floyd was a Mason. Trayvon Martin's father, a Mason. We know he got rid of certain things I can't say. We know how them went, though. We know what those circumstances were used for and who they were to benefit. Y'all read between the lines. But what I'm saying is Seem like they trying to start a race war. Every month it's been a new instance like that, and they bringing up old cases from back in the day, trying to get us riled up so we can all turn on one another, which is still a distraction from everything else that's happening in these last days. Y'all let me know what y'all think about this video. Drop it in the comments. I appreciate y'all for tuning in.